knew something was wrong when my daughter's quilt, one she made at 5, was missing from every family photo my adopted sister kept. Then, at the town gala, a shoebox spilled open at her feet. Inside were doctored pictures, crossed-out names, and a notebook tracking every step she took to erase us. That's when I realized this wasn't jealousy. It was a 4-year plan to remove me as her sibling. And the reason she did it is worse than I imagined. Mara taking the front seat and talking louder. The odd silence when photos went up online. I had 1,000 excuses. Work calls, the tiredness after commute, believing girls would bicker and then be fine. But fine has many disguises. Emery stopped asking for permission to go to shows. She started slipping notes into her school bag that said, "Please believe me," never signing them. I told myself she was dramatic. I told myself I'd notice if it was something deeper. The truth is we learn blindness in slow lessons. A missed recital here, a forgotten birthday card there. Each gap small enough to be dismissed until they braided into a rope around her neck. At first I assumed Mara was a jealous teen jockeying for attention. Until the one evening a neighbor called to ask why Emery never appeared on our family's social feed. My stomach tightened, but denial is clever. I fed it reasons. Still, that niggle became a map I refused to follow until we could no longer ignore the tracks. A box arrives for Mara the week before her volunteer gala. What spills out will change everything. The box was ordinary. Scuffed shoebox wrapped in tissue someone had taped back together. Mara had left it on the hall table the morning of the community gala. A small volunteer award she'd been cheered for every year. Emery asked about it as she scrambled to finish a painting commission for school. I told her Mara's getting a thing later and left it at that. That night, before guests arrived, Emery knocked the box with the heel of her shoe and it split open. There were dozens of cards. Birthday notes with our mother's looping handwriting, gift cards in envelopes, and a smear of something glittery that cleaned into the smell of my daughter's favorite lip balm. Under them, a skinny spiral notebook, its pages full of dates and tiny, frightened handwriting. Emery's handwriting, recording events like a ledger of absence. March 12th, piano recital. Parents didn't come. April 2nd, art show. You were sick, Mara to teacher. I felt the air leave me. Emery watched me as if I'd been keeping a secret box in the attic of our family. I wanted to scream, to apologize for every missed sign, but the box kept talking. It said theft, not of money, but of presence and truth. I slid the notebook into my sweater and felt the weight of years. At the gala, Mara's presentation begins, and the notebook's pages find a witness. Mara moved through the crowd like she belonged to every spotlight. She smiled for photos, accepted compliments about how grateful she was to be their miracle child, and told people with a practiced hush how adoption had saved her. It felt rehearsed even to me. Emery sat 2 rows back, knees together, as if bracing for an impact. The museum's director complimented Mara's volunteer hours. A local blogger read an excerpt from Mara's college essay about being the only child who made it. I toyed with the idea of opening the notebook then. Airdrop the truth onto someone's phone like a guerrilla fact-check, but I couldn't imagine the tidal damage of a public showdown. That's when Mrs. Calder, Emery's art teacher, who'd been sending emails about Emery's disappearing attendance for months unanswered, stood up. She had the kind of quiet clarity that doesn't need drama to land. "Excuse me," she said into the microphone, and for once the room grew small. She described a pattern she'd noticed, and then she asked a question that felt like a scalpel. "Why have we only ever seen one child in the family's story online?" Someone laughed nervously. Mara's smile momentarily faltered. I held the notebook like an accusation. An attendee checks Mara's slideshow and finds something that doesn't match the family's real album. Mara's slideshow was glossy and perfect. Beach shots, awards, the whole narrative of a single child's triumphant arc. As a family friend scrolled to the next image, my sister's phone buzzed with the original photo from years ago. 2 girls, hair tangled together on a beach towel, pockets full of wet sand. Someone else began a chain of aloud readings as more unedited images and emails popped up on phones around the room. A guest connected an old email from Emery's teacher about a missed science fair to the date on a photograph showing Emery with paint on her hands. The room shifted. A cousin rose and asked in a voice I'd heard only at wakes, "Where has this child been?" Mara's fingers went white around her champagne glass. She had been patient in her erasing, cropping Emery out, deleting tags, and convincing others a single narrative was truer than a messy family life. But she had not been careful enough to stop the people who had known both girls before she began. I watched Mara's face turn through a reel of colors. Denial, confusion, then a thin thread of panic. She tried to explain. It came out like rehearsed noise, then stopped when a pile of cards sent by family members to Emery toppled from the gift table onto the rug, letters splayed open like proof. The spiral notebook is read aloud. Its pages cut through Mara's Ori. I remember Mrs. Calder holding the spiral notebook like someone lifting a fragile relic. She read in a voice that was even and terrible. May 22nd, dinner. Mara told me she'd been sent to boarding school on my birthday. It was a date I'd forgotten, a small wound left untreated for years. The entries rolled out. Missed recitals, intercepted emails, notes stolen from Emery's locker. Each line was not melodrama but detail. Addresses of events, times, notes about who had been told Emery was nervous or sick. Listening, my cheeks burned with a mother's cumulative shame. Shame for the hours I had spent at the office, for the explanations I had given myself. Emery's handwriting had scribbled the cruelest thing. I saved it so they'd believe me. The room listened like it was watching a confession play out across pages. Mara retreated into a small, closed body. At that moment she was not yet plastic to the world. She was frightened and raw. Then she said something none of us expected. I didn't plan to hurt her. Her voice was thin. The notebook's pages made no demands for explanation, only for accountability. I felt the world tilt, as if our family's gravity had been recalculated. After the gala, we have to decide who stays, who goes, and who we are willing to be. That night was the first time I watched my two daughters as if they were strangers I both loved and feared. Emery locked herself in her room. Security, a small fortress she'd begged for when she was 11. I knocked and told her I was sorry in a way I'd never had the courage to say aloud before. Sorry for not seeing, sorry for work that replaced presence, sorry for learning too late. She whispered that words were heavy now. She wanted proof, not apologies. Mara sat on the stairs like a shaped absence, alternately sobbing and trying to explain how abandonment filled her and made her take drastic measures. My husband and I argued in the kitchen, soft at first, then hoarse, about whether Mara should be expelled from the house or given space to heal under our roof. We both had failure glinting in our throats. He for not reading the clues, me for believing the story that fit. No one slept. When dawn came, Mara was quiet, and Emery had a plastic folder of notes she'd made, a chronology of the 4 years. The folder's pages would become the map our family needed to navigate the legal, medical, and emotional steps ahead. We call a therapist and the first professional says something that changes our course. Grace, recommended by a teacher who had been quietly worried, said something I still hear sometimes. You can't force repair, you can only make a safe scaffold for it. She asked for separate sessions first. Emery needed safety. Mara needed responsibility. We signed up for parent sessions, couples therapy, and daughter sessions. The hard choices began. Mara would stay, but with accountability, community service, employment, and curfews tied to concrete steps. Emery could choose distance and did. She stayed with my sister for a time while therapy began. The awkward, awful work of admitting we'd failed took the shape of schedules, phone logs, and confrontations about deleted emails. Mara's therapy sessions were full of tremulous admissions, abandonment fears, the calculus of scarcity inside an adopted child's mind, and the terrible rationalization that making a sibling invisible would secure love. Didn't. Grace warned us. Empathy didn't mean erasing consequences. The first family meeting with a mediator was brutal but honest. It ended with a written set of boundaries and commitments framed and hung in the kitchen. Small acts we hoped would speak louder than apologies. Small steps follow. Jobs, letters, and a probation of trust. But there is a moment that marks a turning point. Months passed and the change was not cinematic. Mara took a night job at a grocery store, arrived early, and returned with receipts and a small pay stub she showed me like a talisman. She spent 2 weekends volunteering to catalog museum archives and handed Emery a set of brushes for a class she hadn't been able to afford. Emery returned for holidays but kept her bedroom locked for months. Therapy sessions tapered from twice weekly to careful check-ins. We rebuilt rituals. Sunday dinners, a family statement we read aloud, and a towel folded by 2 hands instead of 1. Some relatives never forgave us for the way we handled things. Others came back slowly. There were setbacks, a hysterical afternoon, an angry phone call from college admissions, but also quiet miracles. Emery laughing across the sofa at something Mara said, a small hand offered and accepted. One winter evening, as they put the last of the holiday lights away, Mara pulled out a photo drawer and slid an untouched portrait of the 2 of them forward. "We did make that day," she said, voice small. Emery shrugged, then wrapped her arm around Mara. "Progress, not perfection. That's the work we chose, and every day we keep choosing it." Years later, the house holds a different kind of light, and the box sits on a shelf as a reminder.